Happy Friday, everyone. So, discover 11 ways to take the drama out of your thinking, part 8. So, we've talked about the 11 cognitive distortions. We've also talked about how we might start to recognize and become aware of some of those cognitive distortions. But how, and the second part to that, is how do we actually recognize realistic thoughts? And what are realistic thoughts, right? So realistic thoughts not only acknowledge complexity, nuance and uncertainty, but also your own resilience. So it's really important that we start to recognize this as well, right? And realistic thoughts sound like this. This part of my life is really hard right now, but things probably will change. Plus, there are other things in my life that are going okay, right? They're not going too badly. I do worry about things that might go badly, but there's also a good chance they might turn out all right, especially if I think proactively and plan ahead. Or it could be things like, that's an interesting story you're telling yourself then. I wonder if that's true. So see, there's a difference there, and it's not so much a realistic thought, but it's a probing and a curiosity thought, right? And then, another one might be, although I might not like the outcome of X and X situation, I can probably deal with this, or this is how I could make it better. Now, I think there's a good quote that I stumbled across yesterday, which is a good reminder, right? We've all heard this before. But the things that you try and control are the things that end up controlling you, right? So it's something to consider when we have all these expectations around how the world should be, the outcomes that should be, where you should be in life, and why you suddenly don't have what you don't have, and why things are so bad, right? It's a really good way to frame things, when you're finding yourself a little bit overwhelmed with everything that's going on. Anyway, I regress, and getting back to what I was saying. So here's a little bit more of a detailed rundown of what realistic thoughts are, and to give you a better idea, right? So we already know what distorted thoughts are, and just to recap, they're kind of rigid, they're often based around made-up rules or shoulds. Things like fit people can always bench press their body weight. I wish that was true. Anyway, they're usually stale, reflecting old beliefs. So things like, I've never been a high energy person. My parents always said I was lazy. To be fair, my parents did tell me lazy, but that wasn't true. Anyway, it's usually pervasive, taking one bad thing and extending it to every aspect of your life. I had trouble falling asleep last night. I'm a terrible sleeper. Really? They're usually simplistic with an all or nothing, always never, good and bad types of like that binary thinking, real basic level thinking, right? I was so bad, I ate all the dessert, I can't stick to a healthy eating plan at all. I'm just big boned, I'll never lose weight, all of those sorts of things, right? Or I'm just a weakling, I'll never be strong. They're often biased and more often towards the negative, right? So I missed 2 out of the 5 planned workouts this week. I suck. And they use quite a lot of creative imagination and are story-based. And not so much story-based as well, but like justification kind of story-based, right? So here's one. Everyone in the gym is looking at me and noticing how out of shape I am. On the other hand, realistic thoughts are a little bit more flexible and nuanced, right? So it could be a comment that says, or a thought, there are many ways to be fit and strong. They're fresh, reflecting here and now. So things like, I'm noticing I have less energy in this moment. I can tell you right now I'm experiencing that, but I'm also towards the pointy end of a prep. Lots of training, not many calories. It's to be expected, right? Anyway, they're back to the whole topic. They're also, realistic thoughts are also specific. They keep events in context. So I had trouble falling asleep last night after staying up watching upsetting news on the TV. Or everybody's favourite, murder mysteries on Netflix. Well, not so much murder mysteries, but maybe true crime series, right? They're usually, realistic thoughts are also nuanced and complex, using a continuum, right? So we have more of a gradient rather than this binary thinking, and they allow more than one thing to be true simultaneously, because many things at the same time are true. And something that happens, it's us who assigns an emotion or a moral obligation onto a situation, right? Like, a situation is just a situation. We determine, based on our view of the world, whether that situation is helpful to us or not so helpful, right? And so anyway, here's an example. I ate dessert and I savoured it. It was more than I typically eat, and also not an everyday thing. Well, have the dessert occasionally. It's freaking delicious. It's what it's there for. Anyway, realistic thoughts are also less biased, and as all perspectives are partial. And look, they're more objective. I wouldn't say they are totally objective because, we're not aware of, I guess, we only know as much as we know or as much as we've been conditioned to think, and we're not going to be aware of everything, right? There's going to be some really ingrained things in there that'll be hard to unpack and everyone else will be doing it, right? Anyway, getting back to my point, so they'll be as objective as possible and looking at things from many perspectives. So an example of that from a personal experience, I got to the gym 3 out of 5 times this week. Considering I started at 0 workouts, that's a big improvement. Another thing is that realistic thoughts are usually evidence-based and continually tested against reality. So looking around, here's an example, looking around, no one's giving me more than a brief glance. Realistically, everyone's probably focused on their own fitness when I'm at the gym. Now, it's interesting. So when I went through those, how do you feel when you think more realistic thoughts? So usually these types of thoughts can reduce the feelings of anxiousness and help you to feel more open, curious, and positive around the future, right? And because they're less closed than the cognitive distortions, right? And they give you different perspectives to consider things and potentially offer some clues around how you might look at things or move forward, or you kind of almost don't have an attachment to it, right? Because if there's something that is external to you and you're allowing that to control you, then you've just given away your power, right? Anything that you think that you don't have, whether it's time or resources or you're not fit enough or anything that you think you don't have, then you've just basically given away your power. You've basically said that this thing that's outside of me means that I'm no longer worthy and I don't have what it takes to get things done. And that's not a place that we want to be at. Now, that's a much deeper kind of, sort of thought process around scarcity and abundance and all that sort of stuff, which we're not going to unpack here. We're just looking at, cognitive distortions and realistic thinking. But anyway, the whole idea is that the more that you can, integrate some of these thoughts or take a minute and go, how could I look at this another way? And even if it's just asking that question and opening yourself up to the possibility, it's going to serve you, but it does take it does take time and it does take practice, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's one of those things where you just kind of have to, anytime that you see a cognitive distortions, and it's like, you can ask a question directly, is that true? But if that's too confronting, it'd be like, oh, that's interesting. What else could be true? Might be an easier question to just open your mind up to some questions. And you don't have to have the answers straight away, right? All we're doing is getting into the practice of asking those questions to open ourselves up to the possibility of different answers. And this practice of noticing and modifying takes time, right? And, but once you do, you can start to work with yourself to help you, basically self-regulate, right? And to moderate your behaviors and to your thoughts, and to, and then to unpack how you really feel about a certain situation and what you might do in spite of that. So, all of us have an inner child, and like a toddler with a pair of scissors, your brain's intent isn't to harm you, right? It's just got these nuances to try and keep us safe. Even so, our brains, like young children, benefit from wise adult supervision. And whether that's from you or your support crew, I guess my point is don't adult alone. And it's okay to be an adult sometimes and to nurture your own inner child. So I hope you found this vlog series useful. Let me know if you had any insights. One lady as well, or actually one of my clients actually shared a great journaling app that helps you to become aware of some of your cognitive distortions. So I will share that in the group as well in the comments. But yeah, let us know if there was anything that came up for you, any new insights or any reminders of things that you already knew and benefited from listening to these vlogs. And have a great weekend.